Let's talk about writing. So, as they would say in Mean Girls, why are you so obsessed with me? Why are college professors so obsessed with making you write papers and give presentations? You have them in every class. We're always making you write something or present something. And the thing is, employers have certain expectations of you as a college graduate. And one of those things is going to be that you'll be able to effectively communicate in writing and in giving talks and things like that. So they want you to be able to research ideas, put them in a report, maybe give a speech to a group of people. You might be presiding at meetings, corresponding with other businesses, trying to pitch ideas to team members or clients. And so they want to make sure that you know how to do all these things effectively. But you don't just sit down and write. Some people may seem like they do that, but that's because they've gotten a lot of the earlier parts of this process done ahead of time. And so what seems to you like someone just sitting down and writing, it's either because they've already done all their preparing and organizing and they've gotten to the writing part, or they just have such a deep knowledge of whatever the topic is already that again, that preparation and organization is already kind of done in their minds. But for most of us, we need to engage in this whole process, and no one can skip the edit or review process unless you're going to be turning in a subpar product. So the first part is preparing, and this is absolutely the longest part. So one thing you want to do is set a schedule. For the most part, if you don't decide, okay, these are the days and times that I'm going to sit down and start and work on preparing for this paper or writing this paper, it's never going to seem like a good time. You're going to be like, oh, look, my baseboards need dusting. So set a schedule. If your topic hasn't been chosen for you already, you'll want to sit down and choose a general topic. Figure out what your purpose is. So if you're gathering information versus if you're trying to persuade someone versus if this is for entertainment purposes, that's going to influence the way that you write. Then you'll be doing your preliminary reading and research. Again, this is the longest part in my head of the preparation process. So this is just finding all the things, all the information you can on this topic and actually reading it and taking notes. Again, that'll be just the longest part. You just read. In the process of reading, you'll be able to narrow down your topic and write a thesis statement. So after you've gotten all this information into your head, you have a clear picture of what's going on, and you can write this statement that's just the general point of your paper. Just if I were to if I had to say what my paper was about in one sentence, I'm in an elevator and I have 30 seconds to explain my point to someone, what would this be? That's your thesis statement. And then as you're reading, you want to take those notes. Take the notes as you're reading. Otherwise, when you're writing your paper, you're going to be like, oh, I know I read about this somewhere and the information's in my head, but I can't remember where I got it from. Eventually, you might even get to a point where you have a lot of background knowledge about a topic, and you'll know that something is true. You'll know that you've read something. You've read that fact somewhere. But if you don't have it written down, you can't use it in your paper until you find out where you got it from so you can properly cite it. So take notes, including the citation. Write a little summary in your own words. Make a note to yourself as to why it's relevant. Sometimes you'll have you'll have written down a source, but you're like, why did I have that source? What was the point of that? Make a little note as to the relevance. And if you find any really good quotes, write those down too. Please try to avoid cutting and pasting as opposed to writing a summary, because then you'll be tempted to just cut and paste into your paper as well. And this will also help you to assemble a bibliography as you go. So, work smarter, not harder. For organizing your notes, there's lots of different ways you can do this. The tried and true old-fashioned method is with note cards. And the purpose of organizing your notes is that not every fact or idea that you come across has to do with the other facts and ideas. They have there are groupings of things that have to do with each other. So for example, if your paper is on Langston Hughes, you'll have some information that you found that kind of describes Langston Hughes and his role in the Harlem Renaissance. Others have to do with Langston Hughes and his upbringing. Where was he born, how he grew up, that sort of thing. His influence on America. So there are things that he did and he wrote that impacted American thought on literature even after his death, which is different from these and different from this. And of course, information about his poetry itself. Okay, so whether like what the style was, what he wrote about, and so forth. So you'll start to organize your notes so that you'll have an idea of what's what. And again, it could be note cards, but whatever works for you, whatever works best in your mind to keep track of information, use that. You can use Excel, Word, note cards, whatever, but you do always want to keep track of your source. One thing that I tend to do when I'm just doing the initial reading process is I will just have this I'll just insert a table into a Word document, and I'll have 2 columns, and on the left-hand column I will put in the source citation. Okay, so like in APA style, if your professor wants you to use APA style, in MLA if they want you to use MLA, but whatever the source citation is, I put that over here. And then in bullet points to the right, I just make little notes to myself. I summarize whatever it was that I wrote. If there are interesting facts and figures, I'll make a note to myself about that. I'll make a note about why this source is relevant to my topic. And if I do have any direct quotes that I want to use, or if I'm just really sleepy and I can't get my brain to summarize right then, I'll put the direct quote in, but I will use quotation marks and I will make a note of the page number so that later when I'm like, oh, but I need to cite this and I can't remember what page it was on, don't do that to yourself. Write that down when you get the information the first time so you don't have to worry about it later. So I guess that's part of organizing also. But once you've done that, once you've kind of grouped, there's a fine line between the preparing and the organizing. Once you've grouped all that information together, then you organize it into an outline. So you'll start with your thesis statement. Again, always keep in mind what the general point of your topic was. So let's say your thesis is that smoking among teenage girls is rising due to influences by peers and advertising that glamorizes smoking. That is your point, and so you will want to organize your paper that way. If that is your thesis statement, then you'll want to talk about the fact that smoking among teenage girls is increasing. You'll want to talk about the fact that advertising targets to young girls directly. Okay? So you'll have those general subtopics, and then for each of those you'll have supporting information. And you want to make sure that every paragraph that you have is its own main idea. So everything within any given paragraph should be related to each other. If something is not, then you'll want to have a separate paragraph for that. Then, and only then, once you've gotten all that information just kind of organized already, then you can go in and write. And this is just your rough draft. Don't overthink this process. So you'll have your thesis statement in your introduction. So you'll state your main point, your thesis statement, and then you'll kind of give them a little rundown of what it is that you plan to discuss. Then you've got your subtopics in there. If this were a 5-paragraph essay, then each of these things would be 1 paragraph, but generally, at the college level, each of these subtopics is probably multiple paragraphs. But again, each paragraph in and of itself is going to stick to one particular main idea. So you'll have your subtopics, make sure it's clear what that subtopic is, and all the details, evidence, and examples in that subtopic are supportive of that main idea. And then once you've gotten through your body, then you wrap it up in the conclusion and you are good to go. Please include a conclusion. There's something jarring about reading a paper that's really good and it's really well organized and everything is following along nicely and logically, and then you turn the page and it just stops. I don't know what it is, but it's emotionally jarring for a professor sometimes to read, especially if we actually got into it. Like, oh yeah, we're really, we were following you on this, and then you, I guess, ran out of time and didn't write a conclusion. It's like it just ends. Oh, it's like being hung up on. So be sure to put at least some kind of conclusion in there, no matter how little time you have. And you'll want to go in and add more details, more evidence, more examples. Remember that rough draft is just your rough draft. Start with what you have. You will, not just can, but will fill out some more information later. So that's when you'll go back, you'll do some more research in the library, check out more books, read more articles and things like that. And I say articles, these are like professional journals, not like Cosmo or something. You can do online searches. I recommend Google Scholar, and also anything ending in .gov or .org will be probably something that you can use as a reference. And just make sure that whatever source you're using is actually a credible, accurate, and timely source. So if you're talking about, oh, smoking among teenage girls is rising, and the most recent data you have is from 1985, that's not necessarily timely. So just be sure to check what information you're putting in there. And then you go through and you edit and review. Okay, so you've just gotten the main stuff in, just the basic. It's like a brain dump. You just have stuff in there. You haven't worried about making it sound decent. You're just literally vomiting words onto the page to make sure that you get something in there. But now it's time to go back through, put it aside for a day, then come back to it. And there's some things you want to check. One is the word count. If you have been given a word count, make sure that it meets that word count. Read it out loud, or have a friend read it out loud to you to see if it flows or if it's repetitious. Sometimes you'll say the same thing over and over again, or your wording of something will be awkward, or you'll just have the same like the same type of sentence over and over again. So you just kind of break it up a bit. Rework paragraphs for clarity and transition. So if something seems choppy, like we're talking about this, oh surprise, we're talking about something else, and it just, like, we need some kind of a transition here. Listen for that in your head. Check it against your outline to make sure that you included everything that you wanted to include. Do your grammar, spelling, and punctuation check. I recommend downloading Grammarly onto your device. That is really handy. And then again, set it aside for a day. Do all those things again. Submit it to the Writing Center. They can have some really good feedback for you there. The Writing Center is not a grammar and spell checker. We have technology for that, but they can help you with that paragraph clarity, organization, and whatnot. Then write your final draft. Double check it for plagiarism. Make sure that most plagiarism is unintentional, so make sure that you have actually cited everything that wasn't your original idea. And then print it or save it, review it one last time, make sure you haven't left anything in there that's embarrassing or whatnot, and then turn that baby in. If you have writer's block, please keep in mind progress, not perfection. Okay, like I said, just spew words onto the page. It's a lot easier to edit than it is to write. Write like you're talking to someone. Write like you're explaining it to your grandmother. Okay, like you can just say it as like you're having a conversation. Sometimes you might want to even skip the introduction. Some people get really hung up on the introduction, and so write that last. Once you know what the paper is going to be about, then you can go back and write the introduction. Be like, oh, these are the things I'm going to talk about. I know this because I've already finished talking about them. Every now and again, take 5 minutes here and there to add something. Just add a little detail, add a point. It'll just help to fill out your paper. And just writing every day. Sometimes it's not so much writer's block as it is anxiety about writing, and we avoid it. And then finally, some stylistic tips. So introductions. It's like, this paper will present the dangers of smoking, as opposed to more than 450,000 people will die this year from the effects of cigarette smoking. Okay, so you'll want to tell people why they care. End with a conclusion. There should be a so what, okay? So do you want them to make some changes, or is it a call to action, or what? There should be a so what at the end of your paper. And be concise, okay? More complicated language is not better language. So just write clearly and concisely. Don't try to sound fancy. Just say what you have to say and move on. And with that, I will let you go and enjoy writing. Thanks.